Can you make your ex leave the house? Can you change the locks? If you move out, do you lose your share? Do you have to stay stuck under one roof until property settlement is finished? The house is one of the biggest pressure points in separation, and it's basically been your safety and your forever home probably. And now all of a sudden, you've got to figure out what happens. And when you break with your ex or you start to see separation coming, it can become a battleground. I know personally how it can feel, how it feels suffocating to be living under one roof with someone you are considering separating from. Walking on eggshells, the kids noticing it, constant wondering, how long is this going to go on for? So today, Mum and I are going to break down 5 realistic ways to get your ex out of the house, to give yourself some space without sabotaging your property settlement. We're going to be talking about what you can legally do in Australia, but also some strategies for anybody in a different country who might need to think about these things. We're also going to talk about what you absolutely cannot do and how temporary arrangements work, what a trial move looks like, and what an ouster order or a sole occupancy order might apply. And most importantly, we're going to bust some myths about if you leave or if you stay. Reminder, this is general education only. Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. You must always get your independent legal advice before making any decision moving forwards. But let's get to the jingle and let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
All right, Ma, whilst it's not the most strategic, most important for property settlement issue, it is when it comes down to a divorce or a breakup. De facto breakup. It, to me and to a lot of people we speak to, the house and the kids are the most important things to them.
It's usually people's biggest asset. And also, someone said once at a seminar I was at, he said, we all know that it doesn't really feel like separation until someone moves out of the house. And I think that's so true.
Yeah.
It's just, And sometimes if you're walking on eggshells with someone and things aren't good, telling them that you want to separate certainly doesn't improve that situation.
That's right. So before we get into the 5 things people can do, let's just quickly touch on the things you definitely should not ever do. So things that you shouldn't do, and Mum, tell me, why shouldn't you throw their belongings on the lawn?
Oh my gosh, it's such a movie thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I don't blame people if their ex has cheated on them or if they've done some horrible thing. It would be very cathartic to just chuck all their stuff out on the lawn. But why in family law is it a bad idea?
It just makes you look like you're controlling your ex, trying to control your ex. It makes you look unstable and unreasonable. And really, certainly in Australia, the family court looks way back to the beginning of separation and into the marriage. So even if you're not in court, you can be pretty sure that's going to come up against you if you need it. So no, behave yourselves.
Okay. Another thing you should not do is assume that it's because it's in your name that they have no rights.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And no, in Australia, the family court can divide the property between you or transfer it from one to another. You do have rights there. Even if your name's not on the mortgage, even if your name's not on the house, go into legal advice before you assume that it's all yours or none of it's yours.
Now, this one could be a little bit triggering, and we are going to be discussing family violence later on. So if you are triggered, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline. If you're experiencing family violence, please call 1-800-RESPECT. But one thing that you shouldn't do, and both of these fall into that category, is harass or intimidate them until they leave or cut off the utilities and force them to leave. These are all very controlling, could be seen as family violence, Mum?
Absolutely. It's financial control. It certainly fits in the definition of family violence in Section 4AB of the Family Law Act. So don't be doing that.
All right. So those are the things you shouldn't be doing.
No.
Okay. And Mum, until you've had property settlement, even if it's not in your name, that house is part of your property pool, so you do have rights to it.
You do. You have rights.
So the big myth that everyone always thinks is, but my lawyer said And this happens in Australia and we hear it all the time. My lawyer said if I leave the house, I lose my rights to the property.
I hear that so often. First of all, it's wrong, completely wrong. And second of all, I wonder how many people, even listening to this today, are hanging in there in the house because they don't want to lose their rights to the house, to their emotional detriment and to the children's detriment. I think the people who say this they don't have a clue, but they also haven't put themselves in their client's shoes. Think how that feels every day, waking up
in a toxic environment. It just would be horrific. So please be reassured. Now, every situation is different, but 100% the family law says...
Yeah, that doesn't matter. Yeah, 100%. The law does not say moving out damages your rights to the house.
Okay, good. All right. So we've gotten rid of the don'ts and we've gotten rid of the critical, stupid myth that goes floating around.
Yeah.
Let's get into the 5 ways that you can get them to leave. Now, remembering this is just in the early days. This is not getting them to leave and you keeping the house forever. If you want to figure out how to keep the house in property settlement, go and listen to our episode called I Really Want to Keep the House or 5 out-of-the-box ideas to keeping the house for property. But this is to get them out so that you're not stuck under one roof, separated for ages while you get your property settlement sorted. So usually, Mum, the person who leaves is what?
Usually the person who leaves should be the obvious one to leave, right? The one who's perhaps the highest salary, who's not going to be having the children or more of the time, like they're having the children less. They've got money, they've got somewhere else to go, they've got family around. And it used to be if they were the people who had been violent perhaps or had some other disentitling behaviour. But really now the court has, since Davis, they say, look, it's unreasonable to expect 2 people in the same house. So they do eeny, meeny, miny, mo if you go to court.
And we'll get into that a little bit later at option 5.
Okay.
Okay. So, and we're aware, everyone, if this is the first episode you've ever listened to, we've got the 4 divorce personality types that Mum and I have come up with. It's amicable, avoidant, manipulative and controlling, and high conflict. So the strategies we mentioned today may not work for your type. If you don't know what type you have, you can go and do our quiz and listen to that episode as well. But we're going to talk about the strategies and then whether or not they relate well to the personality type. So number 1 is simply asking them to leave. Sometimes it's a very simple option. Yes. And we do get people writing in and saying, is there an official form I need to fill in? Do I have to get a lawyer to write a letter so I can leave? Mum, can you just ask them to leave or you leave?
You can. You can just ask them to leave. Please go. What was that Dr. Seuss book, Marvin K. Mooney? Will you please go now? And so you can, if you've been mature enough to have a conversation together about separating, then the next step is to decide who moves out.
So if you're wanting them to get out, you can have a calm, business-like discussion.
Yes.
If this is an amicable type, suggest one of you relocate temporarily, maybe to short-term accommodation or to their parents' house. And then is it a good idea to confirm the agreement in writing?
It's not a bad idea. Without making it look formal, you don't need a proper letter or anything. Just send a text and say, thanks for to move out. You know, and I'm just letting you know if you need to take anything, we can talk about that from the house to set you up.
Okay. So when does this work? When does this strategy work, Mum?
This works when you've got 2 reasonable people, okay, who have got the children's best interests at heart, who aren't trying to control the other person or score points. It's just 2 mature and reasonable adults.
So it's pretty much only going to work for the amicable type.
So unless your divorce or separation is over another person, in which case your ex may leap out of your house and into the arms of the other person, which is amicable way.
And it might be a good idea to remind them, you leaving the house at this time, it's temporary until we have property settlement. You're not losing your rights to anything in the property, so don't stress. So that's option 1. That's an easy one, okay? Yep. And lucky you if that is the case. It's not lucky you're getting divorced, but it's lucky that you get to do that.
It's still tricky, but yes, if you can pull it off, it's much better.
Yeah. The next one is It is offering a structured temporary arrangement. Okay. So you say, I'm going to stay here temporarily with the kids. You go rent somewhere else until we sort settlement, or you move out for 3 to 6 months.
You go out to your mum. Yep, you go to your mum's.
And then you have to sit down and say, okay, who's going to pay the mortgage? Who's going to pay the rates, the insurance, utilities? So why is this holding pattern idea a good idea? And why is it different from number one?
Okay, so number one was just moving out and it was by agreement. Number two is used, I think it's useful where the other person isn't ready yet to completely move out of the house, but they can see the value in moving out briefly. It allows like a structured move out if they're reassured about who's going to mortgage and so forth, and it have to be forever. Those arrangements, they're like an interim, I would call it an interim sole occupancy situation for the person who stays there. You become the tenant in a way of the other person.
So I think this one's really good for avoidant types.
Yeah.
If you can lay out exactly how it's going to happen, what's going to happen with the mortgage, what's going to happen with the bills, who's going to live where, how long is it going to go for, what happens if more time is needed. So really structuring it so that they understand exactly what to do and when to do it. You're creating them a roadmap on how to get out. And if you do have an avoidant type mum, it is so much better, isn't it, to get them out of the house as opposed to you leaving them in the house?
It is, because I worry about avoidant people just sitting in there, in the house, on the couch, and it's a beggar of a job to try and sell the house or to move them. There's kind of a lot of inertia, like they're just stuck. And if you set out a plan, and if also you mention in there that we'll go to mediation so that we can work out who gets what ultimately. That I think a lot of avoidant people are scared of the outcome.
So there's kind of two. One's way more just informal. The other one is a little bit more structured. You could get a lawyer to write that letter for you, couldn't you, Mum? Or you could do it yourself?
You could. Look, I think avoidant people, if they get sent a lawyer's letter, are going to rush off to a lawyer or freeze.
Yes.
So I think there's no harm in putting something down in writing between you both, but no, with an avoidant no lawyer just yet.
Yeah.
And sometimes with avoidant people, I used to recommend to my clients, look, you do the first tranche. When you want me to write to them, tell them the letter's coming. Tell them what it's probably going to say and just take some of that pain and anxiety away. So I think that's a gentler way to handle someone who's avoidant, whether they be depressed or scared or they just don't know what to do next.
Yeah. So newsflash, just a little reminder, you don't need a lawyer to write a kind of letter like this. You can write it yourself. It's a temporary arrangement between yourselves to get started. Mum, number 3.
Yeah.
And I already know your opinion on this, and if you're a listener, you will know already, but if you're new, there's a lot of people who go, I'm not going to get my ex out or myself out. We're going to do this thing called nesting or swapping. Some people call it bird nesting. And that's where the kids stay in the home and the parents come in and out. And it's really good because the kids, they just keep living their lives. There's no change to their lives except for they don't see mummy or daddy as often as they used to. There's no handover time. There's no any of those things. And it does reduce immediate disruption. But, Mum, what don't you like about it? What don't you like about it?
If anyone can anonymously comment below, I'd be interested to hear your experiences. But I haven't known of a nesting situation that has lasted. It's a lovely idea. Also thought about it. It's a lovely idea. It fails for the same reason that your marriage failed or your relationship failed. You don't have 2 homes. You have no homes. There's not one home where you can leave your stuff out and just leave it there and you come back in next Monday. Because if the way that people nest is they rent an apartment and they have the house, usually another house or an apartment, and mum stays in the apartment 1 week and then in the house 1 week, and dad vice versa. So you are actually living in a shared space the whole time. And it's just putting off the inevitable.
So it is expensive because you've got the 2 households.
it's not that expensive, because if they'd just moved out and the kids moved between the two places, you would be renting a second place
That's true.
already.
That's true.
I think it's a lovely for people who are very worried about their children and don't want this to impact them negatively. It's terribly hard to go on with, and you really can't move on with your life.
Yes.
Because what if you get a new partner? What do you do with them in the office?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So if you are going to be doing that, you need to be aware that it's going to be emotionally draining. It's going to need very clear boundaries. And you're really going to have to be quite mindful of what stuff you leave out and where you put your things. And I know we've spoken to a lady who basically said, put a lock on the door to your specific area. But that's if you've got one. Otherwise, they're just sharing the marital room.
I know.
It just sounds horrible.
Laura, sometimes as a strategy, I don't know if people do this on purpose, but they start off nesting, and then it's pretty soon that they realise, you know what, I'm going to stay in the house because I do most of the heavy lifting with the kids. You can stay in our apartment full time, and we're not doing this anymore, and the children can come over and visit you. And sometimes it's a gentler side into that, but it is really, I think, just putting off the inevitable.
I've heard it described as a bridge. It's a bridge.
Yep.
So I guess if you've got an avoidant and they're not willing to let go, or it's like a gentler way of doing it, but only if it's safe and only if you feel that you can do that.
Another bridge that you can do after that, if it's wearing a bit thin, say, how about you stay in the other place for 3 weeks out of the 4 and I'll move out, and just change it slightly. Don't for 1 minute think the kids don't know what's what.
Yes. You know, I knew of someone who would go to the house in the morning before the kids woke up, did all the food, cooking, all the washing, everything. And then once the kids went to school, they dropped them off at school, they'd go back to their little apartment, and then they'd come back, pick up the kids from school, cook dinner, do all of the things, and then go back to their little apartment. And I was like, that seems like a live-in maid, like a service thing. So if you're doing that, that's not nesting.
No, that's not nesting. That's allowing the other person to say, I'm the primary carer of the children. They live in the house with me most of the time, and they conveniently leave out the fact that they're only able to do it with a lot of support from the other parent. And in a way, they're taking over a primary carer role on paper. You know, you're essentially. Yes.
Okay. And with nesting, that is the case. I know another person reached out and said they were exhausted because not only were they doing everything in the other house, they were also having to take care of the other place. And they were just constantly doing 2 lots of household chores because the other person didn't do anything. And so they were just beyond exhausted. So just make sure you think about what kind of chores they're going to be doing, set some boundaries, make sure you've got some rules in place. And it's not just you go there and do all the work and then they do nothing for a week and then you come back to a disaster.
And also, if you're negotiating anything, having them in your space all of the time. When you leave, they're straight in your space. Yeah. When you go back to the apartment, they're back in your space in the house. And then you leave the apartment, they're back in your space in the apartment. You can't have anything that is really just yours. And it's a very hard place to negotiate from.
But my hat's off to you if you're doing that's amazing. Yep. Okay, number 4.
Okay.
Now this one, Mum, it's a little sneaky, but if you've got a manipulative and controlling type, it's probably the best option in a way. Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today. Now, this one, Mum, it's a little sneaky, but if you've got a manipulative and controlling type, it's probably the best option in a way. Or it's one option anyway, and that's the trial move out, where secretly it's not a trial. Say marriages and de facto relationships people have their ups and downs. Some people have rocky patches and they might be going to counselling and they just say, look, I need some space. Can you just give me some space for 3 months? Let's have a trial separation, see how it goes. We'll go to counselling and then see what happens. And then they're out and they're set up somewhere else. And eventually if you can't solve it, then you can set it. Mum, have you seen people do this? Or you tell your clients to do this sometimes?
I have a lot, just to avoid confrontation in front of the children, just to, I guess, save them from abuse, really, or those of control. And look, I think it's legitimate. Move them out. If they move out, go to counselling. See if it's going to work. But I guess they'll assume that they'll be back. But in reality, if you don't heal your relationship with mediation or counselling, they're not coming back. So it's a kind of what do they call it? Like an Irish goodbye, where you don't say goodbye to everyone, you just slip out.
It's a lot less confrontational.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the women are the larger majority of people who get divorced. They're the ones that call it for some reason.
Yes, they do call.
And I've been listening to some podcasts and women have checked out way in advance before the husband in a heterosexual relationship, checked out way before the male's even picked up that there's an issue because they're done. And once they're done. And
that's right.
Look, trying marriage counselling and everything is great, but at least you don't, particularly if it's manipulative and controlling.
Yes.
It's not a confrontation. It's not a face-to-face saying, I want you out.
No.
Because if they knew how you actually did feel, they wouldn't go.
I think that's right, Laura.
And I think it's one way of completely sidestepping the whole roadblock issue that so many people stuck under one roof are dealing with right now. Because they'll do anything they can to get back in control. And if that means they have to go for 3 months to live somewhere and go and do marriage counselling with you, they'll do it.
But they think it's a foregone conclusion. I think about probably 30 years ago, I had a client, and you are right. It's often the women have been talking about counsel, right?
Yeah.
And I remember him saying to me, I did not see this coming. And I said, seriously? Surely? And he said, oh, she said something, but I just thought she was having a bad day. And it turned out that, it had been for ages and he just hadn't twigged.
Yeah. I guess when they stop fighting, they say that's the real sign.
If you don't have the occasional argument, one of you is not necessary.
Yeah. And look, there are some issues with this. You could, if it is a manipulative and controlling person and you do say, I want to have a trial separation, I want some space, they go and do that and then figure out, oh, wait, they've got no intention of coming back and getting back together. They might all of a sudden, as most manipulative, controlling, narcissistic, post-separation abuse people do, stop the money. They might stop contributing to the bills. They can punish you by making your legal fees rack up and making things drag on, but that's something you're going to face anyway.
I think you're right, Laura. I absolutely think you're right. And the other thing they try is to come back again. Then they've got alternative accommodation and they can move out. Do you know, living under one roof was not this common years ago.
Yeah.
It was, if you separated, someone had to move. And there were a lot of people who went home to mum and slept on the lounge chair at their sister's. Nowadays, they won't go. People won't go. And I think, to be fair, the rental situation in Australia at the moment is terrible. And they don't go. And some people are staying under one roof for the wrong reason. And that is to continue to impose on the person that perhaps there's been high conflict or found. That probably takes us to the next section.
Yes. And I just wanted to point out that Krasi Kirova, one of the psychologists, lovely lady that comes on and talks about coercive control, she talks about amnesia, where, if you're being coerced, if you're being abused, your brain will put it away for survival, so you're not thinking about it. Now, if you're still living with them with the intention of separating, you can actually accidentally fall back into the cycle. You really need a proper break from them to have some distance and some space for your nervous system as well as your mental before you can really actually realize what's been going on and seeing it from 5 paces away as opposed to being up close where it's impossible to see. Yeah. So if you get them to go for 3 months as a trial and they are this type of person, don't be surprised if things crop up that you remember stuff and go, oh, wow, that I can't believe I went through all of that.
And you will start to look back at it when you feel safe.
And so whilst this feels quite manipulative as well, when you have this type of personality, you have to be strategic. And if you do have that type of personality, they're going to try and control you through every step of the. So if you can be one step ahead and sidestep the drama that a lot of people are facing, stuck in one-to-one roof with a controlling person, even though it feels a little manipulative yourself, it may actually be something that you be very glad that you did. But go and see a psychologist, go and speak to your lawyer, but it is a good strategy.
It's protecting yourself as well, mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, and the kids. Okay, number 5, the big one. And you just talked about it a minute ago.
Oh, did I?
Sole occupancy, or some people call it an ouster order. How is this a way to get your ex out of the house?
This is when you bring the big guns in and you have to go to court. You might be in the course of perhaps a family violence order in one of the magistrates' courts. If you're getting some sort of intervention order or domestic violence order, those courts have the power to ask the person who is the accused, I guess. They don't call them accused. You're the aggrieved and they're the respondent. So the respondent, to ask them to move for the safety of the person who's getting a family violence order to protect them. So that's often called an ouster order. And so I think all of the states have the power to make that sort of order as part of their family violence program, as part of their things they can do to look after people who are in a dangerous situation.
So what are your warnings when it comes to ouster? Sorry, actually, let's start with how do you get one? Yeah. How do you get an ouster?
So an ouster is normally, that's what the local courts, the state and county courts, call ordering a person to leave. The family court does it a different way. So if you're going to the family court...
Of course they do.
Hey, they're a Commonwealth court.
Okay,
whatever they do is right.
Yep. Okay.
So their orders are called sole occupancy. So they order, instead of the person who's the abuser, alleged abuser, instead of ordering that they leave, they order that the aggrieved, who's been the victim of family violence or high conflict, they have the right to sole occupancy. So they're by themselves, and by definition, therefore, the other person can't come near the house and can't come back into the house. And the court, then there doesn't need to be any culpability. There doesn't need to be anyone who's done anything wrong.
Okay, so you can get it just if you're just both sitting there at home and you can't figure out who should go.
Yeah.
Now, can I just clarify, is sole occupancy mean you get to keep the house forever?
No, okay. It's an interim order only. Okay. It's like the court's going, okay, hang on, we can't let this go on. So they have a look at those things I started to talk about. But assuming you've got two perfectly reasonable, sensible people, but for some reason, no one can bring themselves to leave the house.
Yes.
So someone brings an application to the court and you're basically saying to the judge, you choose which of us. So the judge will look at whether it's convenient, who's got the most money, who's got somewhere else to go. And they will choose someone. And if you're both reasonable people and you both go to court, be careful, because the judge might choose you to leave and the other person to stay. That's the only thing you get from a sole occupancy order is pretty well a guarantee that someone will be made to leave.
Another thing that you say to be careful about is if they do run their business from the house, could ask you to leave instead of them.
Yes. So the first case of that I remember was where the fellow ran a panel beating business under the house. I don't think you could do that today with current health and safety and noise controls. But yes, if there's a business from home, for instance, a hairdresser who's got a salon or something like that, or a daycare thing, they are more likely to be able to keep the house. The court will go, that's reasonable for them to have the house for that reason. If their business is conducted by a computer, then really their business isn't at the house and they're portable, they could move somewhere else.
So if you went to the family court and asked for sole occupancy and you had a partner who was violent or was like coercive control, they could still choose them to stay in the house and you to leave?
They could.
So it's not a guarantee.
Got somewhere else to go. Oh, no, and you must be careful about that. Because the one thing you get from the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia and also the Court of Western Australia, they don't promise that you'll like their outcomes. They just promise that they'll give you an outcome. Because the alternative that we all fight it out, that's your only guarantee with the...
So if there's family violence, so you're saying that, is it the DV courts that do the ouster orders?
Yes. If it's family violence and you need your ex to leave, then if at the time that you get the order for family violence order, you also ask for an order for the other person to leave the premises, then that's the time that you will be able to get it.
So if you're living together and separated under one roof and the police put a DV on your ex, but can you still continue to live under one roof?
If you want to.
Oh, so it is a thing. Like people still so it doesn't automatically mean if you get a DV, you have to leave.
In fact, Laura, this is going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
People who are still in intact relationships, if I could call it that.
Yes.
So you're still a couple. You still, share a bed, kids, all of the things. You're still married to all intents and purposes, and you intend to keep doing. You can still get an order, a family violence order or intervention order against your spouse.
Oh.
And that order, instead of saying things like that they must leave the house, they must not come within 100 metres of where you live, or none of that. All the order will say is something along the lines of that ex, the respondent, will be of good behaviour and not harass or commit domestic violence against the other person.
So there are people out there that are too afraid to get a protection order against their current partner because they're worried that it means that they'll be kicked out of the house or they won't have anywhere to live. So if anyone is listening today and they do have a partner who's violent towards them and the children, you're saying, Mum, you can get a protection order that says they'll be of good behaviour.
In Queensland, as far as I know, the other states as well, you can get an order like that. No, the court's not going to say to you, oh, well, if you can't, if it's too hot in the kitchen, get out or something. No. So you can do that as a kind of a reminder. One of the things that I used to do for people would send a letter saying, my client instructs that you did this, and I like to have clear space around any of those things, and I number them and put them in bold so that anyone looking at it's going, holy smokes, they can't miss that. And if there's one single further incident, then our client, who's fully aware of her rights or his rights under the Family Law Act or under the family violence legislation, will take further steps without notice to you. And that kind of, whoa, okay, I better behave. It will work. It won't work against crazy, violent, unpredictable people on drugs or drinking or whatever. It works where there is a little bit of tension and something that you can let slide, but you don't want it to happen again, like they brought your mail in and left it on your bedside table or something like that sort of thing. There's that. But it's a very dangerous time for people just moving out. And so prioritise your safety. And a lot of the family violence things that happen, it may be the only time they've ever physically been violent is when you leave. But if you look back, you will see coercive control all the way along, and that's the biggest predictor.
So I want to put a proviso here. If you feel triggered by that, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline. If you think you're experiencing any family violence or coercive control, please call 1-800-RESPECT and get some support that way. And anybody who's listening today that's going through that at this time, it is a danger point, as Mum said. It is high emotions. Have a safety plan. We have an episode on how to create one. It's not hard. You just have to do some thinking. And if you don't want to write it down, have it in your head at least, because you will not be in the right headspace when you need a safety plan to be creating a safety plan. And just a reminder to anybody as well, they don't have to wait until property settlement to get away or to get them away from them. That's a really important thing.
You don't have to do that. And sometimes if you can't afford the house, like if it's very expensive and you're going to split up and one of you can't possibly afford to retain the house, you don't have to wait to a final property settlement to sell it, okay? So there are a lot of myths out there that people, because no one rehearses a divorce, no one thinks, oh, I must plan. I for my babies, I plan for my wedding, planning for my divorce. No. Most separations are preemptive, shocking, where there's family violence. You may only leave in the clothes you're wearing sometimes.
So we don't want you to be stuck, separated under one roof. You've got these 5 ways. You can consider which one works best for your personality type. But Mum, and we've done an episode on why people get stuck, but really you've just listed a lot of the myths. The myths keep people stuck, thinking I'm going to lose my rights to the property if I leave, or your ex thinking that. Also, the myth that we hear people saying to them, oh, you're not allowed to do anything for a year. You have to stay separated under one roof for a year.
Yeah.
That's not true either. So there's a lot of myths out there, guys. Just double check, fact check what you're being told.
Your head is full of the emotion of it, right? Your head is full of the, oh my word, I didn't think this would ever happen. Or kids, how am I going to handle the kids? Oh, hang on, where's dinner tonight? How am I going to pay the mortgage? And in the middle of all of that, if someone tells you something with authority, or if you leave the house, you'll lose your rights, you go, okay, instead of checking that out. But if we could name the episode, you don't lose your rights to the house if you leave.
Yes.
I think I could put that on a cushion. But that's
so I think it's really important here. The reason I think it's better to be in separate places if you can find a way is because your property negotiations and your kids' negotiations can be heated and very emotional. And it's near impossible to be able to do that whilst in the same space as that other person. And a really witty way of reminding everyone is like stalemates. That's being stuck there. Like you're going to really start to resent each other. And you may have had an amicable divorce if you had the breathing space, a high conflict. If you're less in each other's faces, it's less likely to be constant conflict, which means you're more likely to be able to settle at mediation. Manipulative and controlling, if they're less in your face and you're less in your space, you're going to be able to remember things. Their spell over you is going to be diminished, and you're going to be able to negotiate from a clearer objective. And even avoidant, just the resentment that you would have for these types is going to drive you bonkers, and you're not going to be in a clear headspace to deal with this. And an avoidant, if they don't, like Mum said, if they don't get out of that house, then there's no reality checking to, oh, this is actually happening. They're just going to stay there until they're forced to leave. But and can I just say, with this negotiating, and I see it a lot, and I talk to people, and my gosh, how do they manage? They go to a mediation, right? Maybe in person or maybe by whatever. And some people are afraid to properly put forward their proposals because they've got to face that's when they go home. Yeah.
Imagine arriving at home together after a long mediation where no one's with. It would have to be someone with so much patience not to say, well, that was a disappointment. Why didn't you? It just happens. It just happens. Yeah.
So I guess the final takeaway is, Mum, that you've already said, you can't force someone out without legal grounds, without that ouster order or the sole occupancy. You can do those, but they're serious. And Mum's warning is be careful because it might be you that gets sent out if you want to be the one who stays home. Leaving does not mean you lose your share of your house. The trial moves usually always become permanent. The stats on that are actually through the roof. It's more than 70%.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then your safety comes first. So there's all these things you've got to think about. And you might come up with a different strategy. I'd love to hear if you've got another strategy on how you've done this with
anonymously,
or just you can just tell us with a nickname. But it can feel really suffocating and feel like you're drowning and walking on eggshells and all the stuff you're dealing with the different divorce personality types, even if it's amicable. So it is such a good idea to get yourselves in separate spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not. You can't really start to think properly about the separation until you've done that step. It's the fundamental step. And I think it's like the beginning of your new life when you're no longer under one roof. But if you stay under one roof, you're at the end of the old life and you're stuck there.
Yeah. Yeah. It also would help move that momentum because if someone is living in a rental and it's temporary, they're going to want that property settlement so they can set themselves up moving forwards. All of these things come into consideration. But I just thought we'd talk a little bit about if you're feeling stuck, here are some options. If you haven't separated yet, but thinking about how I'm supposed to do this, you don't need a lawyer to do it for you. This bit you can do yourself. Don't be tricked by all the myths out there, and we wish you all the best of luck.
Yeah, all the very best.
All right. Thank you, Ma.
Thank you, Laura. Bye-bye, dear. Bye, everyone.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.